Thanks for tuning in to my data project for Edld 7535. The data team that I decided to work with consists of several important individuals within my school, our administrative staff, because they are the leaders within our school and have implemented data goals for this school year. In the content area of reading, our school improvement plan's focus is to improve our literacy scores through our instructional practices. I also include the K-5 literacy coach for our district, being that she's guiding us to the current through the current changes that we are having in our district, um, to going through the science of reading. We're in the process of transitioning to a new curriculum, finding a better curriculum that's suitable for helping us improve our literacy scores. I also included the data coach because of her expertise in helping gather the necessary data, helping us dissect the data and identify trends. I also included intervention specialists and um, pull out teachers simply because they are the ones who strictly help our lower level learners um, reach their potential growth in mastering the standards that we are putting out. The data that we, as a collective team, decided to work with is our common unit assessment for reading. With this assessment, it provided an opportunity to monitor and measure the students' performance on our common assessments and to see if they are reaching mastery of the content that we are taught through these standards. The data that I collected, we utilize a platform called Performance Matters where we input our assessment questions into the platform and build our common assessments. On this platform, students have their own personal login. They log in to complete the assessment. This assessment populates for us in grades through online scoring. Um, the questions that we have input into the system. If you notice, for this particular assessments, it outlines how students performed based on the standards outlined in this unit. If you notice, we had 8 different standards that student needed to show whether they mastered or not. If you look at the first standard, this is from the assessment data of 14 students in my classroom. Um, in that first standard, you see that 9 of my students did not master the content. 4 of them did reach mastery. The second standard, 11 students did not meet mastery. 2 of the 13 did. For the third standard, 9 students did not, 4 students did, 11 students did not. In my fourth standard, 2 did. In the fifth standard, only 1 student reached mastery, 12 did not. The next standard, none of my students reached mastery of that standard. In standard 7, 9 students did not. 2 students reached middle level 2, and 2 students reached mastery. And then the last standard that was measured, 6 students did not, and 7 students did. This information shows me which standards I need to revisit and look at, and which standards some of my students can move on from. I will say that my 14 students are EIP self-contained, and when they take these common assessments, they are required to read the information presented to them by themselves, as well as the questioning, so they do not get read aloud support from the teacher, which is one of the things that I feel is a struggling area for them. Also on the screen, you'll see how my students compared to other students within our school, as well as other students within the district. This is a district platform that we use. So every elementary school in the district does use this platform, does utilize this same common assessment, and you'll see the different levels of performance from my classroom students, the students within my school who took this same assessment for 3rd grade, and then within the district. So the trends are pretty much the same. I will say that being that we do not have a reading curriculum as a resource for support in teaching these standards, you'll notice that within my school comparison and those of my classroom, students are pretty much performing the same, and I feel like that's because simply we do not have a curriculum support, which is why we have that K-5 literacy coach who is working to find a reading curriculum that will help support not only our teachers but our students as well, so that we can get a lot of this read from the school as well as our district to performing at a higher rate across the board. One of the non-negotiables that was established by the data team was to make sure that every teacher completes the data spreadsheet for administering common assessment, and this will in turn help teachers complete their common assessment analysis for the units that we are working on. This is just a layout of each student, how they performed on each of the questions. There were 26 questions, and under the questions, you'll see the percentage correct. With this unit, we noticed that question 20 and question 7 were the questions, and also question 18, that students had a high percentage of mastery. And we see that there were several other questions on the test where students did not meet mastery, and you can see these color codes, red showing that students did not meet mastery of that content, yellow showing that they are approaching mastery, and that needed remediation to push them to mastery is needed. And then the green shows that those students have mastered that question, and that was related to that standard. Overall, if you look at each student and their test scores, we see that pretty much for this 14 set of EIP students, there is lots of remediation that's needed. There are 13 students tested, only one reached the approaching in the yellow, which is student 2. So meaning that student could use some individual support to get her to on grade level mastery for that, whereas the other 12 students will need some additional support in reteaching. And like I stated earlier, I feel like these scores would be higher if I was able to read the text to them. Being that they are already struggling readers, they tend to not try to read or comprehend any text that is in front of them. In order for teachers to properly dissect and understand the data given through these common assessments, we formulated these questioning tools for teachers. In this data analysis teacher form, the teacher puts number of students tested, percentage of students scoring advanced, proficient, basic, below, or far below on these assessments. We know that looking at the data that I presented, we would have 12 students far below and one student showing basic mastery. In this data analysis that was completed, I implemented what strategies that were used to cover these standards, what questions were hard, that had the lowest number of correct respondents, what's my plan of action for reteaching and redelivering these standards for mastery of the content. And going back to the data that was shown previously, we know that these are struggling readers. There was a disadvantage for them. I would, or I have asked for accommodation for them just to support their learning in the classroom so that they'll be able to have some of the text read aloud to them. When meeting with the data team, I was able to recognize factors that could possibly impact the data both negatively and positively. As stated earlier, one of the negative impacts is the school or district does not have an adapted reading curriculum that helps support teachers or students in learning the standards. So teachers are pretty much, I wouldn't say winging it, but finding their own resources to utilize in the classroom, and there's no set validity behind those. We also, which led us to checking the questions in the common assessment for this reading unit to check to make sure that the questions that we were asked were in fact valid. We found that many of the questions were invalid and that we need to look at rebuilding these assessments for the upcoming year. Um, but in the meantime, we were able to find some research based online resources to help try to close the gaps for not only our teacher but our student learning as well. And we will do that by reteaching in small groups based on the student's performance level on this unit assessment so that we can revisit and retest students in a couple of weeks. The action plan that we built as a data team was utilized during this data project. We dissected the data that was given to us based on the platform that we use. We utilized that to formulate our remediation and enrichment classroom for what we call our intervention block, which is our tiger time. During that time, we divide students based on their level of support that's needed, level 1, 2, and 3, as outlined in the previous slides. Through that 35 minutes of intervention or enrichment support, teachers are providing students with learning experiences that we hope to support the mastery of the standards being taught. After remediation or enrichment, we visit step 3, which is reassessing students to determine if this action plan worked for them. We noticed that steps 1 through 3 are pretty much an ongoing process, and we see changes in these groupings every time we revisit or retest for that assessment. Our final view of step 4 happens closer to the end of the year, once we're seeing how students perform on GMAT, and as well as when we reassess for those standards that students missed. As stated previously, we know that step 3 and step 4 of the action plan is an ongoing process, and oftentimes it takes some time to view those steps to see whether those action steps help with progressing the students along the way. With the changes implemented by the data team and myself through this data project, we are more than positive we will continue to promote growth in our student learning experiences. Our teachers are utilizing the data given to them and have learned how to analyze it to provide remediation or enrichment opportunities for every student in 3rd grade, not only just my class. By doing this ongoingly, we know that we will see increased test scores and student mastery of the content that we're set to provide by the state of Georgia to our 3rd graders in the area of reading. These improvements will also show on our final GMAT scores for our reading content area, and we will have many students showing proficient and distinguished learners on their test scores. And overall, These improvement and the positive impact of the action plan that we have implemented will also increase our school-wide CCRPI score.